There is someone in your life right now that God has been trying to remove for a long time. And the reason things keep going wrong, the reason your peace keeps disappearing, the reason your prayers feel like they hit the ceiling may not be your fault at all. It may be the people you are allowing to stay. Today I want to show you something that will be uncomfortable, but if you receive it with an open heart, it will change your life forever. We are going to talk about 7 types of people God is warning you to remove from your life before it is too late. Let me say something gently before we begin. This message is not about becoming cold, suspicious, or quick to harshly cut people off. It is about healthy discernment and setting boundaries. Because the people closest to you are shaping you far more than you realize, slowly, quietly, one conversation at a time, into either who God created you to be, or who He is trying to deliver you from. Proverbs chapter 13 verse 20 says, "Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm." Read that again, because it is not a suggestion. It is a spiritual law. You do not simply spend time with people. You become like them. Their words become your thoughts. Their habits become your habits. Their version of God slowly becomes your version of God. And that is exactly why God, in His mercy, will sometimes begin to remove a person from your life before that person removes something far more valuable from you. I think of a man I will call Nathan, who spent years protecting a handful of relationships that God had been quietly asking him to release. He called it loyalty. He called it patience. He even called it love. But the longer he held on, the more his peace eroded, until one day he could no longer ignore what God had been showing him all along. By the end of this, you may recognize his story as your own. And here is what makes this so difficult. The people God asks you to remove are rarely strangers. They are often the ones woven into your history, the ones you have laughed with, leaned on, and defended for years. That is precisely why it hurts, and precisely why so many believers ignore the warning until the damage is already done. So receive this not as permission to be harsh, but as an invitation to finally be honest about what certain relationships have been doing to your spirit. The first person God may be warning you to remove is the one who only ever tells you what you want to hear. On the surface, they feel wonderful to be around. They agree with every decision. They celebrate every plan, even the unwise ones. They never challenge you, never correct you, never make you uncomfortable. And because it feels so good, you mistake their flattery for friendship. But flattery is not love. Flattery is a tool. The person who always agrees with you either wants something from you, or simply does not care enough about your future to risk your approval by telling you the truth. Proverbs chapter 20 verse 6 says, "Wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses." A real friend will risk hurting your feelings to protect your future. A flatterer will comfort you all the way into a mistake. Nathan had a friend like this for years. Every foolish idea was met with applause. Every warning sign waved away with reassurance. It felt like support. It was actually quicksand. Ask yourself honestly, is there someone in your life who has never once told you something hard for your own good? If every conversation leaves your ego full but your character unchanged, that is not the company God wants shaping your life. The second person is more dangerous, because their attack is aimed directly at your faith. They may never say it outright. It comes as a smirk when you mention prayer, a joke when you talk about church, a subtle eye roll when you say God spoke to you. And little by little, you begin to shrink your faith in their presence, hiding the most important part of who you are just to avoid their mockery. Psalm chapter 1 verse 1 says, "Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked or stand in the way that sinners take or sit in the company of mockers." Notice the progression. Walk, stand, sit. It starts with walking near the mockery, then standing comfortably in it, until finally you are sitting down and making yourself at home in it. The mockery you tolerate today becomes the doubt you carry tomorrow. God is not asking you to hate the people who scoff at your faith. He is warning you not to build your inner circle out of them. Because a faith that is constantly mocked is a faith that slowly goes quiet. Quiet faith is a shrinking faith. If someone consistently makes your relationship with God feel like something to apologize for, carefully consider the spiritual cost of their presence in your life. There was a season when Nathan stopped praying out loud around one particular friend, then stopped mentioning church, then stopped bringing up God at all. He never decided to hide his faith. It simply went silent, one swallowed sentence at a time, until the most important part of his life had no room to breathe in that friendship. That is how the second person works. Not with a single attack, but with a slow, smiling pressure to make you smaller. The third person is the one you feel in your body before you understand in your spirit. Every time their name lights up your phone, your stomach tightens. Every conversation pulls you into drama, complaint, or crisis. And every single time you walk away from them, you feel heavier, emptier, more anxious than before, never closer to God, only further from yourself. This is not just an emotional issue. It is a spiritual one. Proverbs chapter 4 verse 23 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." Everything you do flows from your heart, which means whatever is constantly draining your heart is quietly draining your entire life. Your spiritual energy is not unlimited. And there are people who, whether they mean to or not, consume the very strength God gave you to fulfill your purpose. Guarding your heart does not mean closing it to everyone. It means being wise about who you hand the keys to. If there is a person whose presence consistently leaves you depleted and far from peace, God may not be asking you to fix them. He may be asking you to stop letting them drain what He is trying to fill. Nathan once kept a quiet record without meaning to. He noticed that after certain people, he prayed differently, shorter, distracted, heavy. After others, he prayed freely, as if a window had been opened. He had been ignoring that pattern for years, dismissing it as his own bad mood. But peace is one of the languages God speaks, and when it consistently disappears around one person, that is not an accident. It is an invitation to pay attention. If even one face has come to mind so far, do not push it away. Subscribe to this channel, and write in the comments, "Lord, open my eyes to what I have been ignoring." Because the next four are the ones people defend the hardest, the relationships we protect with every excuse we can find. Nathan defended his two, right up until the moment God showed him what holding on was really costing him. The fourth person is one of the hardest to release, because usually it is not a stranger. It is someone you love, someone who knew you before your faith, before your change, or God began rebuilding your life. And every time you are with them, you feel a quiet gravity pulling you back toward the very things God worked so hard to bring you out of. You tell yourself you are being a light to them, but be honest about which direction the influence is actually flowing. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 verse 33 says, "Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character." It does not say good company always wins. It warns that corruption flows downhill, and that the person standing in the lower place usually pulls the other one down before they are lifted up. God is not asking you to hate this person or to abandon them with cruelty. He is asking you to love them from a distance that protects the work He has done in you. You cannot save someone by drowning beside them. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to return to the version of yourself God already rescued you from. The fifth person often reveals their true colors at one very specific moment, when something truly good and blessed happens to you. Watch closely how people respond when you share a blessing, a promotion, an answered prayer. Do their eyes light up with genuine joy? Or is there a flicker of something colder, a forced smile, a quick change of subject, a subtle comment that shrinks what God just did? James chapter 3 verse 16 says, "For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice." Envy is one of the quietest poisons in any relationship, because it can hide inside friendship for years, smiling and supportive, until your blessing finally grows too big for it to hide behind. The friend who is wonderful in your struggles but distant in your success may love your need more than they love you. This does not mean you parade your blessings or test people cruelly. It means you notice, honestly, who can rejoice with you. Because the people God wants around you in your next season are the ones who can celebrate your rise without secretly wishing you would stay where you were. Think of King Saul and David. Saul loved David, championed him, welcomed him into his own home. But the moment the crowds began to celebrate David more than Saul, that love curdled into something that spent years trying to destroy the very person it once embraced. Envy rarely arrives as hatred. It arrives as a friend who is wonderful until you are blessed, and quietly distant the moment God lifts you higher than them. The sixth person rarely looks dangerous, because control almost never announces itself. It dresses up as care. It sounds like, "I just know what is best for you." It feels like obligation, like you owe them your every decision, like stepping out of their approval is the same as doing something wrong. And slowly, you begin to live your life according to their permission instead of God's direction. Galatians chapter 5 verse 1 says, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm, then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery." When God calls you to something, the controlling person is often the very first voice to discourage it, not because it is wrong, but because it was not their idea and they cannot steer it. Their guilt becomes a leash, and you mistake the leash for love. God already paid too high a price for your freedom for you to hand it back to a person who rules you through guilt. If someone makes obedience to God feel like betrayal of them, That is not a relationship God is asking you to preserve. That is a yoke He is asking you to lay down. The seventh person needs no list, no description, no further proof, because God has already spoken their name to your spirit. If you are honest right now, a specific face came to mind the moment this message began. You have been on knees for a long time. You have sensed it in prayer, in the quiet, in the heaviness that never quite lifts around them. And you have kept them anyway, out of fear, out of history, out of the hope that things would somehow change. Proverbs chapter 13 verse 20 returns here with its full weight. Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. And 2 Corinthians chapter 6 verse 14 asks, what fellowship can light have with darkness? Some relationships are not bad people. They are simply a direction, and that direction is pulling you away from the light God is calling you toward. Disobedience to a warning God has already given is not loyalty. It is fear dressed up as love. Remember Nathan. For years he kept the people God had quietly flagged, certain that releasing them would leave him empty. But the day he finally obeyed, the day he opened his hands and trusted God with the peace he had been missing for years came flooding back. What he feared was abandonment had been protection all along, clearing the space for the people and the purpose God had been waiting to bring. Hear this clearly before we close. Removing someone from your inner circle does not mean you hate them. It does not mean you wish them harm. It does not even mean they're inherently bad or evil, but simply not aligned with your spiritual path. It means you love God more than you love comfort, and you trust that He knows what is good for you better than you do. You can pray for someone, forgive someone, and even love someone while still releasing them from the place closest to your heart. God is not asking you to walk through life alone. He is asking you to walk through it wisely. Every person He removes is making room for someone He is preparing, someone who will sharpen you instead of drain you, celebrate you instead of envy you, and walk you toward Him instead of away. Do not grieve the removal as a loss. Receive it as the protection it has always been. And if obeying this still feels frightening, remember that God never asks you to release something without holding something better on the other side of your obedience. The empty space you fear is not punishment. It is preparation. The same God who is asking you to open your hands is the God who has already chosen what He wants to place in them once they are free. If this message has spoken to your heart today, I want you to do one thing right now. Write in the comments, Lord, give me the courage to obey You in my relationships. That is not just a comment. It is a declaration of trust, and the spiritual world honors declarations. And if you know someone who is being slowly worn down by a relationship they are too loyal to release, share this message with them today. It could be the word that finally sets them free. Subscribe to this channel so we can keep growing together in biblical wisdom every week. God bless you deeply, my brother, my sister. Until next time.